table for our scripture lesson this morning from Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. Hear these words. We'll follow that with the singing of our doxology found printed in your bulletin. When I came to you, brothers and sisters, I did not come proclaiming the mystery of God to you in lofty words or wisdom. For I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. And I came to you in weakness and in fear and in much trembling. My speech and my proclamation were made not with plausible words of wisdom, but with a demonstration of the Spirit and of power, so that your faith might not rest on human wisdom, but on the power of God. Yet among the mature we do speak wisdom, though it is not a wisdom of this age or of the rulers of this age, who are doomed to perish. But we speak God's wisdom, secret and hidden mystery, which God decreed before the ages for our glory. None of the rulers of this age understood, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. But as it is written, what no eye has seen nor ear heard, nor the human heart conceived, what God has prepared for those who love him. These things God has revealed to us through the Spirit, for the Spirit searches everything, even the depths of God. For what human knows what is truly human, except the human spirit that is within? So also no one comprehends what is truly God's, except the Spirit of God. Now we have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit that is from God, so that we may understand the gifts bestowed on us by God.
So in typical Pauline fashion, the Apostle Paul doesn't mix words with the Corinthians. As we mentioned last week, it was a troubled church. It was a conflicted church. There were many different things that were agitating the church at that time. And so Paul does a masterful job of bringing them back to what matters the most. He says, I have sought to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. I've tried to proclaim not in lofty wisdom or fancy words or arguments. I've just tried to proclaim Jesus Christ and him crucified. Because Corinthians, he says to the Corinthian church, Corinthians, all of these things of which agitate you and irritate you and get you stirred up, they don't matter in the long run. The one thing that matters is Jesus Christ and him crucified. And when we look at the power of the crucified one, we see who God is and we see how he can strengthen us on a daily basis. And so the same message, brothers and sisters, comes to us today. First of all, in the cross of Jesus, when we look upon the crucified one, we are assured that he is underneath us. He's underneath us. The writer of Deuteronomy says, the eternal God is your dwelling place, and underneath are the everlasting arms. Friends, these are the same arms, these arms that are underneath you, they're the same arms that were stretched out just like this on Calvary in sacrificial love for you and for me. And so when Paul talks about that power of God in verse 5 and that love of God in verse 10, he's talking about that sacrificial love, these arms that were stretched out for each and every one of us. And you can know today that no matter what you are facing in life, those everlasting arms are underneath you, giving you the strength and the encouragement that you need to move forward with your journey. It is the power of God, the power of the Spirit that the Apostle Paul is talking about that can be underneath us all along the way. Megan Withers says when she was a youngster, she was amazed at the strength of her grandpa and the strength of his arms. She said there were 3 of us grandkids, and it was amazing to us that he could carry all 3 of us at one time. He'd put one of us on his shoulders and one in each arm, and we'd walk around outside. We'd walk around in the house. She said, this is great. This is amazing. How does Grandpa do that? And she said that his arms were so long that he could hug all 3 of us at the same time when it came time for a hug. She said, looking back, I not only am amazed, but I realized that in his arms, I felt protected, I felt safe, and I felt loved all at the same time. All at the same time. Friends, these are the arms that are underneath you today and around you today. Strong arms, arms you can count on. He's underneath you even when you feel like you're falling. He's underneath you every step of the journey. So whatever you are facing today, or if there's someone you care about that may be facing difficult circumstances or situations in their life, look to the power of the cross. Jesus Christ and Him crucified. There you will see that He's underneath you. His everlasting arms are there to give you strength. Secondly, in the cross of Jesus Christ, when we look upon the crucified one, we are assured that He understands us. He understands us. One of the meanings of the cross that we've been emphasizing over the past few months, part of the redemptive quality of the cross, is that when we look at the crucified one, we realize that there's nothing in life that we will face that He hasn't already faced. The cross is the visible reminder of that. He knows what it is to suffer. He knows what it is to hurt. He knows what it is to grieve. He knows what it is to be embarrassed and ashamed. He knows what it is to die. So there's nothing that we face that He doesn't understand. And friends, the cross reminds us of that. He understands us. Maybe you've seen the commercials, maybe you haven't. It's called the He Gets Us campaign. It started just several months ago. Christianity Today magazine says that the He Gets Us campaign has changed the conversation about Jesus. It's these series of commercials that simply reminds people exactly that. When it comes to Jesus, He gets us. No matter who you are, no matter the variety of your circumstances, He gets us. And I'm not sure if the target audience was primarily the church or for those outside the church, because you see, sometimes those outside the church don't think the church understands. Religion has often misrepresented Jesus, intentionally or unintentionally. We've often misrepresented Jesus. And so the campaign is aimed at letting people know, whatever the stage of life, whatever the circumstances, wherever you're from, all over the world, He gets us. Now, if you've not seen that yet, tune into the Super Bowl, because the campaign has thought this message is so important, they're actually having a Super Bowl commercial. He gets us. Whatever you're facing, friends, someone you love is facing a difficult time. Even when you think no one else understands, He gets us. He understands. He understands our insecurities. He understands our anxieties. He understands our fears. He understands our doubts. He understands our questions. He understands when we stray away, when we don't live up to the commitments that we've made. He understands. You say, are you sure? Well, He was on the cross and He said, Father, forgive them. The very people who were crucifying Him, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. So when I don't know what I'm doing and make wrong choices that maybe lead me away from God, He still understands. This is the deep wisdom that Paul's talking about here, because that's not human wisdom. That wouldn't be our approach. You say, well, I want nothing to do with you if you don't want anything to do with me. God understands whatever you are facing. Some years ago, I read a story of a father and son who had a very heated dispute, so much so that they became completely estranged from one another. Now, it was a family tradition. You can tell it's kind of a different era of time in which it was written, but the Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, it was a family tradition. The women would get together, they went shopping, and the father and son would always go to lunch at their favorite diner. And then they would leave there and go to their favorite coffee shop for coffee and dessert. That was their routine the day after Thanksgiving. Well, because of this dispute, obviously they had not done that for some time. But after 3 years, the son wrote a note to his dad. He said, Dad, I've been stupid. I've been selfish. I made some bad choices that put me at odds with you and drove a wedge between us. Please meet me at Darcy's Diner for lunch on Friday. And so that day after Thanksgiving, the son showed up at Darcy's Diner. And sure enough, there was Dad sitting in the same booth that they always had. And he said, "Dad, I'm so glad you came. I was afraid when I wrote that note that you wouldn't come." And his dad looked at him and he said, "Son, I've been here every year. I've been here every year. Right here, waiting, hoping." Friends, this is our God. This is the one who understands us and offers us his grace and forgiveness. This is the one who knows when we make bad decisions and lead us in wrong directions, or when we allow things to get into our hearts and our attitudes and our minds that don't belong there, that threaten to poison our spirits. He understands that, and he's waiting. His grace is still there. His arms are still open. We look to the crucified one and we know he understands us, welcomes us back, and desires for us to live in a connection with him. So whatever you're facing today, or maybe someone you love is facing, look to the crucified one, Jesus Christ and him crucified, and know that he understands. Finally, in the cross of Jesus, we are assured not only that he's underneath us and he understands us, but the final faith of down under is that he undergirds us. He undergirds us. He becomes that strong foundation on which we can walk each and every day. That strong foundation that helps us to be encouraged and strengthened forward and helps us to take the steps in life that we need to take to live for him. That's undergirding every day. Some of you know this. I've mentioned it in various messages in different ways, but our little country church, as is the tradition often in churches, they had a Wednesday night Bible study. And while they were having Bible study in the little church, there were 3 boys of the same family right across the road who had muscular dystrophy. And during my high school years, I went over there and had a little Bible study with them every Wednesday evening. Timmy was the oldest of the muscular dystrophy boys. And I can remember Timmy when he was young. He was still able to mobilize, but slowly muscular dystrophy began to take over his body. It affects people different ways. I was very involved with that movement for many years. But in his case, it began to bend him backwards. And he had difficulty walking. He continued to go to school as long as he could. But I can see it clearly in my mind today. They had an older brother who was healthy as could be. I can remember the bus pulling up to the bus stop. And Timmy, unable to make that first big step, his older brother got down on his hands and knees. And Timmy would step up on his back, these knees, and kind of lunge into the bus. There was his older brother, completely down on his hands and knees, becoming that first step for his younger brother to help him up. I can still see that clearly in my mind as he knelt down and did that. Friends, that is very godlike, because that's exactly what God has done for us in Jesus Christ. He's humbled himself and become obedient even to death upon the cross, that it might help us, undergird us, move us toward the steps that we need to take to continue our journey forward in the direction of his kingdom. So whatever you are facing today, or someone that you care about or know is facing, look unto Jesus, the one who was crucified. Look to the cross, know its power, know its love, and be assured that he is underneath us. He understands us. He undergirds us in all things. Thanks be to God. Amen.